What's up, my family? Listen, first-time listener, or you've been here the whole damn time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, giddy up, let's go, no notes.
That's my baby. That's my baby.
We're going at it at 110%.
I just want 5 minutes of happiness, please. Just give me 5 minutes.
And they scored! They did it!
What
the hell was that? Oh, yeah!
What the f*** are you talking about?
Hey there, hi there, hello there. Here we are once again with Bowen on the Birds, Friday afternoon in the Delaware Valley. And finally, the Eagles are going to play a game again before too long, Monday night at Kansas City. Much anticipated. And I have some good guests this week to discuss those interesting topics. First, I have from the Philadelphia Inquirer, David Murphy, who a columnist who's graciously agreed to join us today from his palatial manse in Swarthmore. Let's get David up here.
What's up, Les?
Yes. David, you can tell David's eyes are still adjusting from the Sixers court the other night. They painted the court red for the in-season tournament, and it was quite a thing. It was bright, and Dave noticed that, I think.
It was. I mean, it was. Yeah, I wrote about it today in the column. I'm telling you, man, it should have come with a trigger warning walking into that place.
Yeah.
I was not ready for it. My blood pressure was going as soon as I saw it. It was. It's a very angry color, red.
Yeah. It was quite a distraction from a game that wasn't that great. You know why the Sixers have started to lose, Dave?
Probably because everyone's started paying attention to them.
Well, there's that. And then there's the fact that I got carried away with the 8-1 start and bought really expensive secondary market tickets for the Tuesday night game against Cleveland this coming week. Mm-hmm. And immediately, whatever the hell happened with Kelly Oubre happened, and Batum went down, and they started losing left and right, and they'll probably never win another game again. But that's
that's what I'm feeling on. I wouldn't expect them to win anymore for the rest of this season. Yeah. But next year, there's always next year with the Sixers, right? But no, I think, look, I know it's the Eagles podcast, but I'll give my Sixers feel.
Sure.
Look, Tyrese Maxey is way better than anybody thought. He's a legitimate superstar, probably top 20 player in the NBA right now. But it's going to be a grind. Like people are going to adjust him. He's going to have to adjust back. And the Oubre loss is real. The Nick Batum loss is real. They need those wings. It's always been a thing with them. It's why Danny from Covington to Danny Green to Josh Richardson to Matisse Thybulle. You need those guys out there, and they had those in Oubre and Batum, and now they don't have them. And I think that's really been all the difference in the world. So I wouldn't jump off the bridge just yet.
Okay, I'll hold that thought then. Well, back to the Eagles, since this is, as you noted, an Eagles podcast. Bye week has come and gone. It seems like it's been forever since that ridiculous Dallas game. To me, that Dallas game really epitomized the 2023 Eagles. They were clearly good enough to beat Dallas. They built a 28-17 lead in the fourth quarter and had the game well in hand, and then did so much stupid crap that they probably should have lost. Dallas had 1st and 5 from the 6 with plenty of time left to score and couldn't. The Eagles, to me, I know the sort of the national narrative is, Eagles fans, the team's 8-1, but they're never satisfied. If you really watch this team, you can't go on like this. You're not going to play a whole season, tiptoeing through the tulips this way. And I really hope they sat down in the bye week and got some things straightened out, so they won't have guys running into each other and fumbling with 51 seconds remaining in games and things of that nature. How do you see the Eagles right now?
I see them exactly as you see them, except I've been saying since week 3 that they can't continue. What did you say? Tiptoeing through the tulips?
Yeah, Tiny Tim reference. Yeah,
I was actually using those exact same words. I would turn to my buddies and I would say, "These Eagles can't keep tiptoeing through these tulips."
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
4 weeks into the season. I mean, look, the first 3 or 4 weeks, this team was bar none the luckiest, most fortunate team I've ever seen. I mean, the number of even that Patriots game, which we all thought that was an impressive kind of gritty victory, but now looking at that team,
the Patriots are terrible. Yeah,
my
of course,
Lord.
the Patriots have gotten some guys hurt since then, but yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and Christian Gonzalez was a huge loss, among others. But yeah, I mean, they should have lost that game. The number of penalties that the Patriots had in that game, in big moment after big moment after big moment. Yeah. The Vikings game, I mean, we saw what happened. that was just absurd. I mean, look, I don't know how Justin Jefferson fumbles that ball at the angle that he fumbled it. It was literally a moment in time, like a wormhole. It was the only way that he could have fumbled over that pylon. He did. Fumble after fumble after fumble in that game. But look, here we are in week 10, and they're 8-1, and they're still winning games. I mean, I think the rest of the NFC is really going to rue the fact that they only have that one loss right now. I mean, they really should be they should be a 3-loss team, and they're only getting better. Now a lot depends on Hurts's leg, but there's something to be said for winning these games. And look, see, I think Sirianni Sirianni doesn't get enough credit. I really think he's kind of the difference maker, because he coaches really a perfect game when it comes to timeouts, game management, stuff like that. I think that's what, when you look at the difference between the Cowboys and the Eagles, it really is the difference between Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni, at least.
I agree with that. Yes, I agree with that very much. But it just seems to me like they kind of slide by on their talent. They do a tortoise and hare where they're the hare every week. But they
also have an offensive line that can run you over like a steamroller, and that it's always good to be able to fall back on that. I mean, they give themselves so much margin for error on 4th and 1. I mean, they essentially give themselves 2 or 3 extra possessions every game, and that's hard when you have a quarterback like Hurts and a fleet of receivers like they do and an offensive line like they do. That's tough to overcome.
I agree. So this week, going to Kansas City. A couple of things there. One is they've never beaten Andy Reid. He's 4-0, including the Super Bowl, which I think most people around here remember pretty well. Mm-hmm. The other thing is Andy Reid also had his bye week this week. So, and I've seen a bunch of different formulations of this, but apparently the most up-to-date one is if you include playoffs and last year's Super Bowl, Andy is 29-4 coming off of a bye. It's to me, that you can break down matchups, and this is my agree or disagree question this week, by the way, which I'm supposed to promote, I guess. You can break down matchups, and you can talk about, the Chiefs defense is a little better than last year, but their offense isn't nearly as good, and blah, blah, blah. You just can't get past this part, though. Andy Reid, and he knows the Eagles so well, and he's so good at self-critiquing during that bye week and getting his team ready to play the next game and knowing everything the other team wants to do coming out of a bye. It just seems like that's a hurdle that's going to be really hard to get over for the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, I've been going back and forth on this game, and if I cut out, I have to take my headset off because it's about to die, and we'll switch to the microphone. But I've been going back and forth. I'm trying to do my picks for my my little wagering pool that I'm in, and I keep flip flopping on this one. Look, no one has more respect for Andy than I do. But look, we saw Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts go toe to toe with him in that Super Bowl on a huge stage. Great game plan by the Eagles. Hurts threw the ball as well as any quarterback can throw the ball. Really showed a lot. Really showed a lot with his both his pocket presence and his accuracy in that game. But like you said, no one's a better play caller than Andy. No one sniffs you out like Andy, and you give him an extra week, and 29-4 speaks for. I'd love to know what those 4 losses were, but
yeah. Well, I know I do know 2 of them.
Well, the Super Bowl was one, right?
Well, his last one, that would be Super Bowl 39 would be one of them. Another would be his last year with the Eagles when they were horrible. They were 4-12 and they lost after the bye that year.
That Colts game they lost to Andrew Luck in the playoffs, maybe.
And then his next year, his first year with the Chiefs, he lost after the bye. So he actually lost two in a row, 2012 and 2013. But he hasn't lost with the Chiefs since then, I don't believe, after a bye.
Well, we're going all the way back to Jamal Charles there. So
yeah,
but yeah, then the flip side is everyone forgets this, but Patrick Mahomes was playing at maybe 65% in that Super Bowl. And that's kind of the counter argument is, look, man, they lost to a quarterback that not only lose a quarterback, not only did they lose to a quarterback that could barely walk, they lost to a quarterback who then ran for 30 yards on a back-breaking play while they couldn't walk.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm really interested in this one. I don't bet against this Eagles team. I just don't. But the Chiefs are definitely missing something this year on offense. So they just don't have they're really missing Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
They just don't have it's like the Eagles teams you covered back in the Todd Pinkston, James Thrash days, now they have Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice he's a solid young player, but yeah, I don't know, man. I what do you think? I think this is as 50-50 as it gets.
I'm going to do a really weasel thing. I already turned in my pick to A2D here. I'm going to pick the Chiefs by 1 point, which would mean that they win the game, but they don't cover, and that the Eagles would cover. If that makes any sense, I don't know, but I just don't have a great feeling about going to Kansas City and beating Andy Reid. It seems I haven't seen enough from the Eagles in terms of efficiency and consistent, getting it done in the fourth quarter. But here's the funny thing, though. Looking at stats this week, the Chiefs and the Eagles are being outscored in the fourth quarter, both teams. In fact, a lot of Chiefs stats look like Eagles stats in several. Mahomes and Hurts have almost identical stats this year. Completion percentage, interceptions, touchdowns. It's right down the line, which is considered kind of an off year for Mahomes. But as you said, he doesn't have the great weapons that he used to have. But they're really doing it with their defense, and I wonder about that with the Eagles. Missing Dallas Goedert. You got two good corners back there for the Chiefs. You got an excellent pass rush. Chris Jones, they often run him inside and get pressure up the middle, which is incredibly disruptive to any team, but it seems especially disruptive to the Eagles. They've got 31 sacks, a little bit more than the Eagles. So, it's I don't know what kind of game it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be a low-scoring game or if one team's going to get a couple touchdowns and, kind of glide away. I have no feel for it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's on both sides. It's going to come down to the pass rush. I think Hassan Reddick is the name of the circle. Jalen Carter's the name of the circle. Reddick's had a really weird year. Every week, it seemed like he didn't take a week off last week, but there'll be 2 or 3 weeks at a time where you don't hear from him, and then all of a sudden he pops out with,
when he had that thing on his hand, he clearly was affected by that. He was not using his hand nearly as well. And what I've seen here lately is he tends to they're very well-timed sacks, but they're always in the fourth quarter. Right. And I would kind of like to see, the Eagles defense, just like last year, the first couple possessions seem to be like, oh my God, they're doing this, they're doing that to us. They're scoring touchdowns, and then they sort of figure things out. I'd kind of like for them to go into a game having some things figured out once in a while, but we'll see if that happens.
Well, so I'll say this: defenses are throwing a lot at the Eagles that they've had to adjust to. I mean, I think, the mush rush we've seen, from week one, these front sevens are almost playing Jalen Hurts like he's a punt returner. And it'll be interesting to see against a guy like Chris Jones, whose kind of first instinct is to knife the gap and kind of just pursue. I mean, you're really seeing teams, just try to almost like maintain that pocket on defense as they're kind of like, going after him. And it's a good strategy because he's we forget Jalen Hurts he spends so much time like moving himself laterally into throwing lanes that we forget that he's the guy's not tall, and you can see it whenever he's got when that radius kind of shrinks around him, he just can't see. So
that's a good point. I like that point.
But then it's almost like a good edge rush is detrimental to your cause against this guy because he can beat you to the edge. It doesn't matter how fast you are. So you're really seeing guys have to stay home. And that's the kind of thing where Andy, I know he's the offensive guy, but I can't imagine he's going to trust Spags to handle this one on his own again, right? Spags is still there, right?
Yes.
I mean, they didn't do much right against the Eagles last year in the Super Bowl. I mean,
right?
Yeah, I know.
If the Eagles had gotten the ball back, I think they would have won.
Right.
That Bradbury hold. Yeah.
And we're talking about same offensive line, same defensive lines, pretty much. And the Chiefs. Orlando Brown hasn't been great this year wherever he went, but they definitely haven't replaced him either.
No, the two tackles have not been very good. But Mahomes, the thing that's irritating about that for opponents is Mahomes still doesn't take sacks, even though his offensive line isn't any good, and he has to throw the ball away sometimes, and the plays get mixed up. They can't go deep very much, I think, because he didn't get that kind of pocket. But he's been sacked a dozen times. He just doesn't let himself get sacked. He knows he sees people and gets moving, now that he's healthy. And I think that's something the Eagles have struggled with when quarterbacks extend plays. I guess everybody struggles with it, but I see it a lot. I saw it a lot in that Dallas game with Dak Prescott. They would just lose coverage, and there'd be one time I thought it was really frustrating. Prescott was being pressured toward the sideline. He was running full tilt. At that point, he's right near the sideline. There can't be more than one guy, that he has any shot at. And he gets to the one guy who's wide open. The guy's just standing there by himself down the sideline. That I hope the Eagles, that's my fondest wish for this bye week, is that they straightened out some coverages, and some of these guys that haven't played together very much got, some sense of how all this fits together. But before we go on here, Dave, I'm going to have to take a commercial break, and we will come back with your important thoughts on that subject on the other side.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
In our family, food is our daily bond. My nonna, affectionately called Mama by many, found solace and joy in the kitchen, sharing her love through delicious creations. She turned her culinary passion into a flourishing business alongside her husband and sons in 1983. Celebrating 40 years is a testament to our exceptional team, friends, family, and beloved customers. With gratitude, we look forward to the future, expanding our brand to share the highest quality Italian food and wine nationwide. Our heartfelt thanks to everyone who has played a part in our story. Grazie mille.
And we're back for the second segment of Bowen on the Birds on this fine Friday afternoon. Tom Arnone says he predicts 27-24 Eagles. Let's go. Earlier, someone in the comments was agreeing with my prediction. There we go. That's Rob Povia. He says, agree with poll. Coming off the bye, it'll be tough for the Eagles to win. He has 27-21 Chiefs. So anyway, Dave, we were talking about the Eagles and the defensive coverages, the pass coverages, and the bye week, and maybe getting Bradley Roby back, which I think is important, and giving Byard a chance to maybe get his feet under him after 2 really tough weeks. What do you think of all that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how much of it is the coverages and how much of it is, Darius Slay just kind of hitting that wall that we've seen. Every great cornerback hits it at some point, and for whatever reason at that position, once you hit it, you hit it fast. I mean, just run it down from, Richard Sherman probably hang on and was manageable a lot longer than others, but Darrelle Revis, find any one of these cornerbacks and they're shell themselves, once they hit whatever that barrier is. And I'll be honest with you, that's kind of what I've seen out of Darius Slay this year. And it's kind of exposing James Bradbury, I think, on the other side.
Okay.
I don't know that Bradbury's any worse than he was. I just don't know that Slay's as good as he was.
Okay.
Now, again, I'm not breaking down film every day, but that's just kind of what jumps out at me. I mean, Slay just looks like he's lost a step is what it comes down to. So, but interestingly enough, this is kind of the team, this team matches up fairly well against the Eagles because they don't really have that outside, they don't have the outside threat. But, we watched Jake Ferguson shred this defense, and we watched Logan Thomas catch a touchdown against this defense. And I'm not sure that, the Dolphins don't have a tight end. The Jets don't really have a tight end or a quarterback. And, I don't know that we've seen this team kind of match up against a tight end. And I don't know, I don't know if that's why Byard was brought in, part of the reason why Byard was brought in, but you've got an entirely new kind of middle of that back seven of defense. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they decide to kind of match up with Kelsey. I wouldn't be surprised to see James Bradbury, kind of draw a lot of those duties.
Me too. And I still think, I think fans are real down on him because he's having a terrible year on the outside. But I think on the inside, his savvy and his physicality could be, I think he could still be quite effective. But I don't know if they're going to try that again or not. I think Sean Desai was actually asked about that today. And not surprisingly, he didn't really give an answer. But other than to compliment James Bradbury.
But Kelsey looked like he was on pace for 200 yards against this team at one point in that Super Bowl. And then fortunately, Mahomes started picking up someone else. But I think he still finished with 6 for 81 or something like that. So, I think it's going to be. I think this is kind of be your quintessential shootout, weather depending.
So, what do you think of? So they're going to get Jurgens back. They've had a hard time. The Eagles. They started out running the ball wonderfully this season. They were just as good as anybody in the league with DeAndre Swift. Then the last month or so has not been good. I kind of thought Sua Opeta just didn't have the speed to get out there in front the way that Jurgens was doing. Then, of course, last game it was Tyler Steen, the rookie. I guess they'll have Jurgens back this week. Do they get back? And Kansas City, I should mention, is not a great team against the run. Do you think we'll see a lot of that?
Well, yeah, to your earlier point, kind of who knows? Remember that Vikings game, in week whatever it was, 2, 3, was kind of a microcosm of this team where, to your point, they come out in the first quarter and, it's like they're trying to prove something, and then they realize that they have to fall back on the security blanket and run the ball 13 times in a row. So I think a lot depends. It's hard to answer that question. It's hard to predict how they're going to come out. I think that they've gotten a little more kind of functional and sensible and balanced in the first and second quarter here in recent weeks. But I don't know. I think it's a big moment for this coaching staff and this new offensive coaching staff.
We've talked a little bit about the Super Bowl. What's your standout memory for the thing that you think about when you think about that Super Bowl?
Well, I don't know if I think about one moment. Just kind of abstractly, I just remember coming away thinking that Jalen Hurts had kind of really shown me everything that I needed to see. He played about as good of a game as a thrower as you can play. And it'll be interesting to see what. I mentioned it before, but it'll be interesting to see if that defense adjusts at all. Because Hurts ran the ball pretty much at will. 15 carries for something like 75 yards, and that touchdown. And it'll be real interesting to see if they can adjust at all, because the rest of the league kind of has a little bit. We're not seeing Jalen run like he used to, and obviously with the knee now, I don't know how much of a capability he really has, but yeah, that might
be frisky this week. I think the knee feels better. I know coming into the bye that Dr. David Chow, who does the injury stuff, the former Chargers orthopedist, had said if this is a bone bruise, then that week off is going to, he's kind of at the outer edge of it anyway. And a week off after the Dallas game really ought to get it pretty back to normal. So, and Hurts kind of indicated yesterday, I think, to reporters that he feels pretty good. I wonder if he'll, make the most of that this week. It is a game that even though it's not an NFC game, and even though you can't avenge the Super Bowl in any kind of regular season setting, there's no, you're not going to get revenge on the Chiefs for the Super Bowl by beating them in week 10. But I do think this is a game that really tells you where you are more than any other game they played. And they've got this tough stretch that they're kind of in the second installment of, and they were lucky to get the win in the first installment. If they get the win in the second installment, I think you have to conclude that they're going to get through this pretty well. Right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I mean, I do think it's look, we all know the story of Jalen Hurts, the pictures he's had on his lock screen since that Super Bowl, and he's obviously a guy who will, even if it requires manufacturing something to fire himself up, he'll do that. And I don't know how much difference that really makes at the quarterback position. But frankly, I don't know that Jalen Hurts has kind of proven yet that he is that kind of player where you don't want to make mad. And this might actually be his first, opportunity to really, kind of have one of those Brady moments or one of those, Rodgers moments or the Manning moments. Maybe I'm overlooking something, but maybe the Brady game the Bucks game last year. But yeah, I mean, this is like one of the, if he comes out and kind of uses that to kind of power a kind of upset performance, that's one of those, mark it down as a plot point in his career type things. And I don't know how many of those he's had. So we'll see. I mean, is he Jordan? Is he, does he have that killer instinct? Does he really, does he bring himself up to another level? And in moments like this, it'll be interesting to see.
It really will. And I wish we didn't have to wait until Monday night for this. I wish it was a Sunday game.
We're too old for this, Les.
I certainly am. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely too old.
I fall asleep when I'm at the games, and it's
I always kind of liked night games in terms of writing on deadline and feeling like I could handle that I had a handle on how to do that more than some people did. Felt like that was an advantage for me, and also an advantage in that readers the next day, assuming a lot of people would wait until the next day to read it, although they could get it online at 1 a.m. or something. Readers the next day would not have been bombarded with so much analysis and so much rehash of the game by the time they got my story. So I felt like it was fresher. But it's also nerve-wracking in those situations, especially when you got like 2 different leads going. And that Dallas game would have been hellacious to write, I think, because you thought the Eagles had won the game, and then they tried to unwin it very hard. How do you feel about night games? Are you as a columnist? Is it really tough?
Well, I mean, it depends. I'm with you. I enjoy writing on deadline. I think I think it's fun. And I think that the interest is kind of the news cycle maximizes exposure, I think, for the reasons that you mentioned. But NFL, at least, you have to get there. I mean, the game starts at 8, but you got rush hour at 5. So
Yeah.
I mean, for those who don't know, I mean, I guess really, there's not a ton to do before an NFL game. But I mean, most people's custom is just show up 2 or 3 hours beforehand, 10 a.m., 11 a.m. Just mostly to beat the traffic before, because if you wait, and try to get in the parking lots at that point. But then at the, these primetime games, they just take so long with the commercials.
Yeah.
And, and you just feel like you're at the stadium for so long that, I don't enjoy NFL primetime games.
And then you're really wired when you get done and you get home and it's 2:30 in the morning and you're not sleepy.
Yeah. Well, you got to keep in mind, I covered baseball for 5 years, so everything was a night game,
Yeah.
And it kind of kills your social life. that's
absolutely.
So that was always my number one gripe. But from purely a craft standpoint, I like writing on deadline. I like kind of like the, I like the pace and kind of the rhythm of.
And it's exciting, more than a 1 o'clock game, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Dave, I'm going to let you go here. I really appreciate you jumping on with me. Good luck with the new house and everything.
Well, thanks.
This has been great.
Get some books for my shelf.
Yes, indeed. You should probably write a few, and like Sealski, put your own up there.
I'll just put all Sealski's books up there.
That you could probably fill it up that way. Yes. Well, thank you again, Dave. We're going to go to commercial, and when we come back, hopefully we're going to have Vahe Gregorian from the Kansas City Star.
Awesome. Thanks, Les.
Take care.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colma.
In our family, food is our daily bond. My nonna, affectionately called Mama by many, found solace and joy in the kitchen, sharing her love through delicious creations. She turned her culinary passion into a flourishing business alongside her husband and sons in 1983. Celebrating 40 years is a testament to our exceptional team, friends, family, and beloved customers. With gratitude, we look forward to the future, expanding our brand to share the highest quality Italian food and wine nationwide. Our heartfelt thanks to everyone who has played a part in our story. Grazie mille.
And we're back with another segment of Bowen on the Birds on a warm afternoon in the Delaware Valley, I would say. I was going to say sunny, but it's not really that sunny. So, I can't go with that. And if a little bit, we're having some technical problems with Vahe Gregorian right now. We're hoping to get him on in just a few minutes. We were talking with David Murphy about this Monday's game, Eagles at Chiefs, and all the interesting subplots there that were thoroughly examined back when those teams met in the Super Bowl, but they're all still really relevant. It's, Andy Reid, it's Brett Veach, the general manager, it's Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator. There's a lot of cross ties here and a lot of Philadelphia imprint, I think, on the Chiefs and their operation. Probably two of the best front offices, I think, in the NFL. Brett Veach doesn't get the kind of publicity that Howie Roseman gets because everybody assumes that Andy's doing everything. I'm not sure that's the case. I think Veach does a lot. Veach started out as Andy Reid's personal assistant many years ago with the Eagles. He was literally the guy that would fetch Andy's hamburgers from the cafeteria. He's come a long way since then. He's a smart guy. He played football at Delaware. He's from this area. Really good GM, I think. Really on top of everything. Doesn't need the spotlight and doesn't get the spotlight in that situation. But a lot of really great personnel decisions there. They've had to let guys go, and they still managed to be really, really good. Tyreek Hill, situations like that they've remade the team a few times. drafting Patrick Mahomes not everybody thought Patrick Mahomes was going to be what he is today. A lot of people really didn't think he had NFL passer type ability. He certainly wasn't the top pick in that draft, but here he is, the top quarterback in the NFL, and 2 Super Bowl rings. So, yeah, you could make the argument that the Chiefs have done a better job in personnel than the Eagles have even this last decade, but the Eagles probably are pretty close second. As far as the game goes, Chiefs come in at 7-2. They lost their opener to Detroit by 1 point, which we all know now is not a bad loss at all. Detroit's really good. And then they lost to Denver, which was really, really, really unexpected at that point. Denver has done some things since then, but at that point, nobody thought Denver was any good whatsoever. So that was a shocking loss. And it kind of, I think, underlined some of the problems the Chiefs are having offensively with the lack of explosiveness, which is not something that they really had to worry about in previous years recently, but it has been the case this year. I think they have some guys they're kind of trying to bring along, and they're going to be better offensively in the second half than they have been so far. But this is not a great offensive team that the Chiefs have so far. It is a very, very good defensive team with some pass rushers that maybe you're not familiar with, like George Karlaftis and the other guy. We're stalling for time here, as you can probably tell, as Vahe gets everything together with the good old technology. And in looking at this game, I saw a couple things that I thought would be interesting for the Eagles. One is Isaiah Pacheco, who's one of my favorite running backs in the league. He's from South Jersey. The Chiefs got him late in the draft several years ago, and he is just so hard-nosed and so good in short yardage. I wonder if he could give the Eagles a little bit of trouble, even though the Chiefs have not been a great running team this year. I think he's good enough, and the interior of their offensive line is good enough to carve out some yards there. I don't think their tackles are very good. We were talking about that with David. They've had to replace both Orlando Brown and Wiley. Andrew Wiley moved along this year. The guys that replaced them just have not been up to that standard, and I think that's something the Eagles can certainly take advantage of. But getting Patrick Mahomes on the ground is another matter. Even if you get past the tackles, he still has something to say about that. I always enjoyed, when I was still doing this for a living, going to Kansas City or even playing the Chiefs with Andy. A lot of memories there with Andy Reid, a lot of good memories, and a guy that was, pretty down to earth, really, in terms of his relations with the media. Even today, I could probably still text him and get an answer. Not high-handed. Didn't always have a lot to tell you that was interesting, but, a decent guy to deal with. The Andy who has become a funny guy on commercials is certainly something that I would not have predicted a decade or so back. That was not the Andy we had in Philadelphia. And I think Eagles fans probably are pretty amazed by that as well. And I think one of the things that kind of stung about the Super Bowl loss was Andy learned so much from all those near misses in Philly, Super Bowl 39 and all the NFC Championship games. I think he's a more adaptable coach now and a better coach. And maybe the Andy that we had, back in the early 2000s wouldn't have won that Super Bowl. So that was a bit of irony, I think, that he showed how much he has learned in beating the Eagles in a very tight, very close game that I think the Eagles should have won. I think the Eagles had the more talented team. And we're still struggling to get Vahe Gregorian in with us here. I'm really anxious to talk to him. Vahe's one of the best columnists in the country, a Penn grad. His father was a prominent administrator at Penn, among many other things, a very distinguished American and, somebody that left a big mark on the area and the country. It sounds like we're getting Vahe in here, and I'm about out of things to say, so it's just in time. Let's bring him up. There he is. I'm sorry, much trouble there, Bob.
Assume it's operator error with me.
No, I'm sure it's not. Looks like you're right in the middle of practice or something. I didn't mean to make this really difficult for you.
No, as you might be able to tell, as you know from your own experience, there's only a certain part of practice we get in. Although it's interesting, I had to come outside to a spot to do this when I couldn't get the phone going, and you can actually hear Patrick Mahomes' very distinct voice and some whistles in the background. So I'm kind of giving you it in sense around in a peculiar way.
Oh, excellent. Well, so heck of a game coming up Monday. Something that people here are certainly very pointing toward, very animated about. What's the situation there? The Chiefs are 7-2. It's not a conference game for them. It's they have nothing to prove here, I guess, having beaten the Eagles in the Super Bowl. How are people there looking at this?
Well, listen, it's an interesting way to put it. Nothing to prove. I think they do feel like they have something to prove, because I think that it's all about looking forward, not backwards. And I don't know if this gnaws at them, but it's come up more than a time or two that the defense did give up 35 points to the Eagles in the Super Bowl. And I had a nice little chat with Steve Spagnuolo today for something I'm working on, and he talked about how a lot of the Eagles fans he ran into would be asking him about, down the shore or wherever they might have run into him. They'd be asking about, did you think that was pass interference? If only we'd gotten the ball back, things like that. That I think not that it's something that's burning in the Chiefs, but I do think that there's a certain sense of the Chiefs feeling, we won that game. People seem to still doubt us. Okay. I do think that's a little bit at play. I also think there's enormous respect for the Eagles. I'm sure the Chiefs had great respect for the Dolphins too, but I think if you could talk to anybody and put the lie detector test on them, or however you want to phrase it, that all signs would point to the Eagles being their greatest challenge, and them knowing that.
I see. Well, Vahe, the thing that I keep coming back to with this game, it's my agree or disagree question this week, which is basically you can break down all the matchups and, who's going to cover Travis Kelce and whether the Chiefs' offensive tackles are as good as they were last year. But what it all comes down to is Andy Reid's coming off a bye week, and the Eagles have never beaten Andy Reid. Those two facts. Those are the two things I can't get past in analyzing this game. What do you think? What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's very interesting, and there's a few different things that go with that, right? On one hand, you do wonder how much that's in the heads of either side, right? Does it actually play a role here, or is it just sort of a anecdotal coincidence? I would say, in terms of streaks and such, we sort of wondered if the Chiefs would ever lose to the Broncos again. And just a couple weeks ago, that 16-game winning streak ended, and rather improbably, I would say.
Oh yeah, I was shocked.
Just based on what we've seen. So I think those things are more interesting for us probably than they have to do with the game themselves. But what I would say about the Chiefs is this: I think. And look, the Eagles could expose this, and I hope you'll delete this after that if this happens. But But I think their defense is really for real in a way that they haven't had, certainly in the Andy Reid era, at least that's been established this early in the season. So that's that. The flip side is, though, that this offense is still in flux, and it's had moments, but it has really not had any of that kind of magic meshing that we're used to in the Mahomes era, other than in spots. And what I'm building to here is I think that they've got enormous room for improvement on offense, and I think the capacity to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm swallowing the Kool-Aid here a little bit, but I am persuaded that a lot of the things can look really out of sync in the passing game because of a lot of little things that are an inch off or a mindset off or a misread off. And so we spoke with an audience of Kansas City Star subscribers the other night about this, and they were referring to the pass game as experimentation. And I said, it's not experimentation, not with personnel, not with anything. It's really still a matter of orientation. A lot of the pieces are semi-similar, but there's enough new pieces that, as you know, Les, all these dynamics are completely different year to year. So they're integrating some guys in that some have not been what you might hope. I do think a big X factor now and going forward is what's Kadarius Toney going to be, because nobody makes a miss like Kadarius Toney, but they're not going to him a lot. And Andy Reid has hinted this week that maybe, he's still continuing to battle the injury that he had surgery for. So that's a long-winded way of saying I think the Chiefs are motivated to win this game. I think the Chiefs can get better and make it really a great game against a formidable team. I don't know what it's going to come down to. I suspect we'll be watching this game intently in the last 2 minutes, wondering who's going to win.
And we hate that on Deadline. I know. I remember that much anyway, even though I'm retired.
But
I'm going to go to commercial here, Vahe. We hope to have you on the other side for a few minutes at least, and we can get the rest of your observations about this game coming up.
My pleasure. Thanks, Les.
Hats.com is the premier destination for quality and fashion-forward hats and more, with designs for every style and trend. Locally based and run by Philly sports team fanatics, Hats.com can help you elevate your hat John. Utilize the easy-to-use guides at Hats.com to find your perfect size and style, and shipping and returns are free. Hats.com. Find yourself in a hat. Use code Philly for 15% off your order. Hats.com.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, proudly celebrating 40 years and our new, bigger showroom.
Twice the size and twice the fun.
More pool tables by Olhausen. More dartboard sets, including custom reclaimed backboards. More bar and kitchen stools that can change a room.
And more bars, including pre-built and custom.
Hot tubs, skee ball, shuffleboard, outdoor,
and fun.
Royal Billiard and Recreation, your ultimate game room store. Now located on Bethlehem Pike in Colmar.
And we're back for the final segment of this week's Bowen on the Birds with the very gracious Vahe Gregorian, who's gone to great lengths to talk to us today from Chiefs practice in Kansas City. And he's out there in the sun. It must be a nice day in Missouri, Vahe.
It's gorgeous. It's about 60. And I hope I framed this picture up well enough to not let you know that I've taken a knee on your behalf, because it's the only way I could get this angle right. So
I never would have known.
Yeah. So I hope my posture is telling you otherwise.
Well, I hope your knees don't give out. You're a former Penn football player. Yeah. Are they still working there for you?
They're still working. I'm a little creaky, but less creaky than I would have been if I ever played a lot at Penn. So, I got that going for me.
All right. Well, let's talk about the Chiefs defense. Now, 4 really good pass rushers, it seems to me, led by George Karlaftis, whom I don't know a whole lot about. I was looking him up, and I saw that he was born in Athens, but funnily enough, no memories of Bulldogs or Hedges or anything like that from him. It turned out to be a very different Athens.
Yeah, he played between the Parthenon instead of the Hedges, or something to that effect. It's interesting. I'd have to review this, but it's really the most fundamental part of his story. So I'm going off the top of my head back to draft day and a little bit in that time after. He was on the I think of the junior national water polo team. In Greece, and then moved here abruptly, as I recall, after the death of his father. But still, he goes back to Greece every summer, and he's an interesting guy. And there was a little bit of concern, I think, about him being a tweener in size when he came out last year. But one of those guys that they've never stopped talking about having the motor that you want, and that shows up, I think, in everything from what you see on the field to, as I remember Steve Spagnuolo telling us, he was the guy during Zoom meetings who had his face pressed up against the camera. So you knew he was into it.
That's cool. That's one of the things that I was kind of talking about while we're getting you ready here was how good I think the Chiefs have done with personnel. And Karlaftis was like the end of the first round, right? Toward the end of the first round, they drafted him. A lot of times that's kind of a dead zone in the draft. It seems like the guys at the top of the second round usually are good players, but the end of the first round tends to be, I don't know for why, but teams take chances on guys who are projects and stuff, and you just get a lot of busts in that range. But here they got a guy, he's got 6 sacks, he's got 44 pressures. He really looks like a valuable piece moving forward for years and years. Well,
he is, and to accent your point a little bit, Les, that draft class is going to go down as one of the best the Chiefs have ever had. It's a little bit apples and oranges going back to some of the AFL days where they had a few Hall of Famers come out of there. They also drafted Gale Sayers, but he went to the Bears.
Yeah.
But I think it's seven or 8 of these guys. I'm sorry I don't have the number in front of me. Played 10 or more snaps in the Super Bowl, and you're talking about Trent McDuffie. I think emerging is really one of the best defensive backs in the conference. I heard you talking about your guy. Pacheco, who is, infinitely interesting to me and quite a story. Brian Cook. So Sky Moore has not become who they hope he will be yet. That's still a little bit, a little bit in flux, and maybe there's still room for him to emerge. But on balance, it's been a great class, and it was instrumental in their Super Bowl run.
And having that defense this year, that has really been the key. I mean, I've watched a few of the games, and I've been amazed at how the offense has kind of struggled at times. But that defense is so much better than anything, as you said, anything you've seen since Andy got there. The line is great. The corners are really good. Is there anything about that defense that isn't good? Is there anything they don't do well?
No, I don't feel like there is. And I think they made 3 really shrewd off-season pickups there to theoretically just to bolster depth, but they've become pretty important with Charles Omenihu on the line, Drew Tranquil as a linebacker with Nick Bolton having been hurt a lot, and then Mike Edwards in the secondary. So they've had some those guys have all been significant in what they've been able to do. So they've got depth, they've got speed, they're athletic, they're strong. Justin Reed is a much improved player this year. Snead and McDuffie, I really believe, are becoming among the best in the NFL at what they do. So there's a lot of good stuff happening with that defense, and I don't want to let the offense off the hook too much, but I do think it's reasonable to suppose that certain decisions that the Chiefs are making are complementary football given the way the defense is playing. And the Chiefs have left a few points on the board literally on purpose at the end of a couple games, just taking knees. Numbers might look a little better, but they really aren't passing the eye test offensively. And until they get a couple more of these receivers really in more of a rhythm and trust game with Mahomes, it's going to be like that. The guy that you've probably seen some highlights of and certainly seen the numbers starting to crack through. Watch Rashee Rice. I mean, he may drop a ball or two, but he's going to make some really hard catches, and he's going to run.
And
through
he has that speed, right? That they've been missing the speed. He's kind of a speed guy.
He does, and who's really got the speed that near and dear to our hearts is former Penn Quaker Justin Watson, who still. I think the last 2 seasons, Justin still has the highest per catch yardage percentage or average, and he's had some big moments with the Chiefs. So let's see if he becomes a little Philly special on this game.
A little bit off the topic, Vahe, but I wanted to get to this before we let you go. I've got a couple things actually that are a little bit off topic. But the first is, so you spent a lot of time in the Philly area, going to Penn and spending part of your growing up time here. You know this market and what people are like here, and you've also spent a lot of time in Missouri, in St. Louis and in Kansas City. Is it really that different? That's just something we hear a lot, especially during baseball season, about how the Midwest fans are so supportive and the Philly fans are so negative, and it's just such a different atmosphere. Is it really that different? How do you feel about it?
That's a great question, and I would say this. I think let's take the fan part out of the equation first. I do think people in the Midwest are a little less brusque. It's certainly in Kansas City, it's a little more immediately warm. On the other hand, I always found back home, and I mean the Philadelphia area when I say that I can walk into a place and start having a really in-depth conversation over a cheesesteak pretty fast. And so I think it's a little more sort of politely hospitable here, and yet just as engaging there. I do think if you were to do some kind of fan index, I don't think the differences are what people think they are. Yeah. I mean, maybe some things are, I think booing comes faster in Philadelphia, but I don't think it's not in the repertoire of the Chiefs fan. I just think it's more instinctive. My gosh, I can remember being at the vet, just automatically booing a guy for striking out. And in hindsight, I look back like, man, why was I? Because I was part of the mentality, I guess, and until you step out of it. I had family come one time to a game. It was actually in St. Louis, and she just started booing right away about something. I said, we really don't do that the same way here. But I digress from the real point. The real point is that I think fans are fans, and with the right amount of passion and the right amount of fire, it's pretty similar. Although I'll leave you with this thought on that, Les. I've gotten to know Carl Peterson fairly well, former Eagles executive, and he always tells a story about walking off the field after Dick Vermeil's first game at the vet, and Vermeil turning to him and saying he saw people getting hit harder in the stands than they did on the field. So that might have been a reflection of that team. I hope
that's no longer true, but certainly there are a lot of stories along those lines, I know. Well, before we go, I do have to ask you about the most important aspect of this week's contest. So apparently, Taylor Swift's parents and Jason Kelce's parents, but they're also Travis Kelce's parents, are going to meet in Kansas City Monday. Now, I know USA Today has hired a Taylor Swift reporter. Have you guys done this, and will you be able to watch the game, or are you going to be watching the Swift box and seeing what's going on there?
Well, it's an interesting question. I don't think we're going to hire a specific Taylor Swift reporter, but we have had a couple people both in sports and more or less our features section, really following that, tracking that. It's been a little bit of an interesting dilemma as the sports writers, covering the games and the beat, how to approach it. I feel like if we continue to tell ourselves that some of this work is the first draft of history, then you got to figure out a way to address the cultural element too. Yes. On the other hand, I try not to go overboard or pretend like I really know her work. I do know enough about her work that I can say she's certainly admirable and apparently Springsteen-esque in her performances, which I can really respect. Yeah. So it is a really interesting thing, though, right? And it's probably particularly interesting because it's here and not on one of the coasts or in a megatropolis like Philadelphia. I mean, I think it's just got a different kind of twist to it because it's here. And I would argue, actually, it's got a little charm, but I'm not sure everybody feels that way.
Yes, I agree with you. I think it's an interesting thing. I think it's kind of like what, DiMaggio and Monroe was a long, long time ago, maybe. I don't know, a little bit.
I made that reference to something today, but as I studied it, I thought to myself, even that's the closest thing I can think of, but he had retired by then.
Good point.
It's just a little different, but I think you're right as far as the collision of intergalactic stars from sports and entertainment.
Real quickly before you go, I was mentioning while I was waiting for you to come on that the one thing about Andy Reid that I never would have guessed 10, 12 years ago would be that Andy would become a funny guy in national TV commercials. I did not foresee this, and it's quite a phenomenon. And I also wanted to ask you about the Kelseys and the way they have taken over. As they're huge now, just everywhere. It's amazing with these guys, and I wouldn't have seen that coming 10 years ago either.
No, who would have? I mean, 10 years ago, I think, Jason was still trying to pull Travis through Cincinnati and some of the ups and downs in his life. And Andy, it's funny because you know him well enough, and I've known him long enough that there's that sense of humor in him. Mm-hmm. And I've always kind of wondered why he didn't show it more. When he does show it, you realize he's got a wit about him, but he's mostly close to the vest. So I feel like he's kind of doing it to, just to please Patrick. Like he does everything to stay in Patrick's good graces. But Andy is a Andy is humorous. I mean, he has that. It's just he doesn't show it that much. And very last thing on that is his background back in Los Angeles. His dad is an artist, mm-hmm. But also let's not forget that one of Andy's first jobs was working as a caterer at the Tonight Show and dealing with celebrities, and at one point telling John Wayne he wasn't allowed to get 4 meatballs. So Andy knows that world.
And Andy probably understands, rationing the meatballs there. I mean, that's a subject near and dear to his heart.
That's probably right.
Well, Vahe, I'll let you get back to work here. I really appreciate this so much. And I hope you have a great time Monday night. I hope maybe you have an easier game on deadline than it looks like it's going to be. I'll certainly be watching, and I'll be reading you in the Kansas City Star.
Well, thanks for doing that. And thanks so much for having me. Sorry for the hiccup early. I should have just gotten on the computer instead of the phone, but glad it worked out, and always great to see you, Les.
Thank you again, Vahe Gregorian. And that's about it for another week of Bowen on the Birds here on A2D. Thank you guys for letting me do this. And I'll be back with you next week with a post